Welcome to Nightmares Before Bed, a supernatural podcast where each show will explore dark and mysterious places, eerie creatures, and all things spooky and creepy. And speaking of spooky and creepy, please help me welcome your hosts Jonathan Rosen and Troy Cannon.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Nightmares Before Bed. I'm Jonathan Rosen along with Troy Cannon, and today we are going to talk all about Alcatraz. So I don't know, I've been a fan of like everything Alcatraz for a long time, fascinated with it. It's the history is it started out like as a prison, first, like I think it was like an army barracks or something. They used it for the army, right? Mm-hmm. So they used it for the army, and then later on it was made into a prison. It's off of San Francisco on an island, and just the thought of that is really creepy to me right off. A prison that you can't get. There have been several escape attempts through the years from there. Supposedly none of them successful, except the ones in the movie that it's a possibility to escape from Alcatraz, where 3 guys supposedly escaped. But because of all the harsh conditions there are plenty of stories of ghosts and like all these creepy, spooky happenings. So have you always been a fan of Alcatraz too, or no?
I have been.
Fan's the wrong word. I mean, it's a prison. A lot of stuff happened there, but yes.
It's one of the locations that you just hear about. You know about it. You hear about it.
Right.
And when the movie came out, Clint Eastwood, he was still, in my eyes, he was almost exclusively a cowboy guy.
Right.
So when he did this movie, I was like, wow, is he going to have a 6-shooter? How's he going to have a 6-shooter and be in jail? As a kid, I was like, well, what's going on? But I watched the movie, learned about the Birdman of Alcatraz and learned about the shark-infested waters that people should not jump into because you're probably not going to make it. I was always interested in that. And then seeing that, and then later seeing Shawshank Redemption, how that guy escaped from a prison, I was like, well, maybe you could do it if you really, really had to. And
what like a couple of years ago, we're getting off topic here with it, but a couple of years ago, wasn't there the thing where supposedly one of the people that escaped like started sending like letters or something? Wasn't that the past couple of years that this happened? And they or relatives of this guy said that they really escaped. That the people theorized that escaped. The authorities said no, that they died. But a lot of theories that they really made it.
I believe they made it. And I think that the reason that the authorities would say no, they didn't, is to stop other people, stop the encouragement of other people. They made it. Maybe I could make it too.
Right.
So yeah, I'd bet a shiny nickel that those guys made it. The bodies, as far as I remember, were never recovered. So they're saying they were eaten by sharks, which could happen. Or they drowned. So I think that they made it. Someone who's fairly popular for actually making it out of Alcatraz, but he did it the old-fashioned way. Al Scarface Capone. He actually bought a house in St. Pete. It was.
I didn't know he had a place in St. Pete. I didn't know that.
Yeah, big pink house. I'm going to look it up. Hopefully, I'm going to put it here if I can find it. Okay. It'll be sitting between us. But it was on. I want to say it was on the south side. I can't remember exactly the ad. I can see it in my head. I can see a gigantic pink house. But he made it, and he died in Miami. Now, the treatment of the prisoners was supposed to be so harsh. Regular prisons, you figure they are to rehabilitate people. Alcatraz was built as a prison specifically to punish the inmates. So they were being tortured, they were being beaten, they were being
away from prying eyes of of everyone else.
Yeah, nobody look over here, nothing to see as they're bludgeoning someone unconscious. Al Capone um, was a notorious person, of course, and he didn't want to go into the yard and mix with other people because he had offended so many people through things like the unaliving of their relatives and what have you, that he didn't want to go out there. He's like, they're going to kill me. So they allowed him to go into like the shower area and play a banjo. He learned how to play a banjo, and he would just go in there and ding, 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 and he would banjo it up. Now, eventually, he made it out, and he dies of syphilis in Miami. Supposedly, he became there's several ghosts. We talked about the several types
there are many
of ghosts.
Right? Yeah.
He became what's called a wandering ghost, meaning that even though their body died here, their spirit is there. So he died in Miami, but his treatment was so bad that supposedly he came back to Alcatraz as a spirit. And sometimes the inmates and sometimes the guards and even people who would go there to visit Alcatraz on tours would say in the showers, you could hear ding, 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 ding. It wasn't the battle on banjos, but it was
it wasn't deliverance. Right.
It wasn't deliverance, yeah. So the banjo would still play. The band still played. So supposedly, he is one of the more premier ghosts that still walk the halls. People say there's cold spells. You hear that all the time about ghosts. There's spots, cold spots people have walked through, and then you hear that banjo, and they're like, it's Al. Now I wouldn't want to deal with Al Capone when he was alive. I'm definitely dealing with him as a dead guy.
Well, yeah, okay. So going back, first of all, of course, I got to say that Al Capone's ghost is here because it helps for the tourists. It helps sell tickets. But all right, so going back here, I was looking at all the things here. So, Mike, it was a military installation in the 1850s. Right, it was discovered like 1770s. Discovered. People knew about it before that. But 1850s, it was a military installation, and then sometime later on, that's when it became. Like, first of all, I can't even imagine. You were in the military. Have you ever been like a place like so far out, deserted, where you're doing your like training or staying at like that?
They do some isolated things in isolated places if they don't want prying eyes. But I trained with the Force Recon for a while. But they travel and train, so they go to different places. So when I was with those guys, they were in Virginia, and they weren't there for too terribly long a time, but they moved on and went someplace else. It could have been an assignment. It could have been just some additional training. But I do know that that they do put them in places. Well, let me just say this: when you're training, let's say you're training to become a Marine Corps basic rifleman. There are no prying eyes. You are out there training, and there's not a place where civilians or people can come. So they want it to be isolated. So someplace like Alcatraz sounds right.
Well, it's amazing. I would be so depressed if I was military training on this island away from everyone else. So it was like for military training, but they started using it for military prisoners as well. Also, like in the 1850s. I did not realize that it was such a military installation for so long. Looking at this thing, it's saying it went on for like close to 80 years before it really became like a prison that, a full-fledged prison. I mean, they started using it for a prison before then, but, it really started, that's when it happened, like much later than when it first became using it for a military installation. But again, you mentioned Al Capone. There are several ghosts, which we'll go into in a second, but there are also like some nondescript ghosts, like you just mentioned, and like you hear banjo in the shower, you hear crying, people crying, like just walking the halls. You also hear the sounds of guards shouting. You hear certain spots in there too. This is such a creepy place there too. So, what were some of the ghosts that you saw that found out about?
Well, a lot of it's a prison, so of course you're going to have a multitude of, okay, when you get a place that's haunted, something tragic or someone evil is usually the cause of the haunting.
Right.
For Alcatraz, there were
It's
so
an
many
event of
evil
trauma.
people.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like a birthplace. It was the perfect storm for a haunting. I mean, you've got Al Capone. His ghost is supposed to be there. Machine Gun Kelly, Roy Garner. There's like 100 famous murderers. A lot of them were mob guys.
Right.
A lot of these guys were mob bosses and mob hitmen that died in the prison through the electric chair, because they were still electrocuting people with the electric chair there. So the room where the electric chair is supposedly haunted, and you hear the moans from people and stuff like that. Particularly the guards hear it, as if the ghosts were saying, "Hey, man, you remember what you did to me last year? I'm back." So you hear a lot of that, and these people were executed in this one room, and that room. There's several really, really haunted areas in Alcatraz. Alcatraz is an enormous place. Another one of the really big places was D Block.
Right.
D Block, it was notorious for tragedy.
Well, before you finish, we talked about other episodes that whether you and I would go to certain places, and I was talking about like whether it's benevolent ghosts or like some ghosts that were that just got attached to the place, and that's where they're haunting. Like we talked about chambermaids feeding chickens, or just like maids wandering, cleaning up beds. With benevolent or evil spirit, by nature. There are no benevolent ghosts here. This was a prison. These were hardened criminals. They didn't send out someone here doing, who cheated on taxes. These were people were killers, and just killers, murderers. They beat people up. They did the worst kind of things. So yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No. So in that place, you get for a good old fashioned haunting, you need some horrible things. And like I said, D Block is where, like you were saying, they didn't put, people who would have jaywalked. Right. You probably make it to Alcatraz, but the worst of the worst were put in D Block. So there was a concentration of what I would say was evil. They're murderers, people who had done wrong things to youths. There's a lot of people in there who were, I'm going to say they really needed to be there. So yes. They were there. They had earned their position. And to me, Alcatraz having so much evil, so much concentration of evil, so many, even the guards were evil. The guards were torturing people. They had rooms where they would put people in and they wouldn't give them a bed. They had to sleep on the concrete, and they wouldn't give them food for a couple of days. They tortured people. Yeah. So even the guards who were supposed to be providing some type of law were lawless.
Right. Yes.
So to me, this is it's almost a portal to evil. If evil exists in the netherworld, this would be one of the places where you could go to venture into Hades or Hela or wherever. You could go there through this place, I think. So to answer your previous question, I'm not sure that I would go there for a tour, because I think something would follow me back.
But you have that experience anyway, that you say that can manifest with you, that you're able to sense all those things. So I would probably go there as a tour. But I've read, doing research for this show, and watching other videos too about the history of Alcatraz, there are people still to this day, like guards also in the tour. And I don't know if they're using that for promotion of the tours or what, but that they do have guards that hear screams at night. People are, or security guards, or people that run the tours, they do hear screams at night. They do sense this presence. They felt that cold presence, or like someone talking to them or whatever. And there are people that have gone on tours that have reported sensing something walking through. And again, like, how could you not? This place is a history of evil and torture and the worst kind of people being there. And you mentioned D Block, but all the blocks, they were saying, like, A, B, and C as well had different hauntings there, different ghosts associated with this as well.
You and I, and I'll even say the third gentleman that was with us for the other show, you and I are definitely pop culture guys,
Yes.
Comic book guys. One of my favorite comic books is Spider-Man, and I think he has perhaps the greatest rogues gallery. Batman lovers will argue that, but I think Spider-Man has the greatest rogues gallery in all of comics.
Well, the Batman?
That rogues gallery. Batman guys will definitely argue that point.
Yeah.
Because I'm wearing a Batman shirt. Batman guys will say, no, it's Batman's rogues gallery. But
I like Spider-Man's more too, but yes, I'm with you.
Yeah, he's great because they all got superpowers. Spider-Man's rogues gallery, one of his most consistent and most difficult people to fight, is called the Sinister Six.
Mm-hmm.
The Sinister Six, a lot of our viewers will not know that name comes from Alcatraz. There was a Sinister Six in Alcatraz, and they were considered Alcatraz's most dangerous and violent criminals. The guards named them the Sinister Six, and that was Al Capone, Machine Gun Kelly, the Birdman of Alcatraz, Roy Gardner, Frank Lee Morris, and Alvin Cripps. They collectively murdered, unalived, more people than any other six people in the prison. They were responsible for more death and torture before and after they got to the prison, because they were still killing people once they got there.
Right.
So they were called the Sinister Six, and I would, again, bet a shiny nickel that at least three of those guys are still hanging around Alcatraz.
Yeah. Well, here's one. We mentioned D-Block. Here's the one famous. They said, visit cell 14D. So they said you feel the coldness when you go into the room, that you feel that sense in there. And because someone did die in that cell. I'm sure that people died in many cells too, but someone did die in that one. And the guards found him strangled in the floor of the room. So someone killed him. It was not him hanging himself. He was strangled to death in that room. So someone did kill him in there. So they said right before his death, he kept screaming that a creature with glowing eyes was trying to kill him. So we're not even talking about human elements anymore. Maybe we're not talking about that. So we're talking about something else. And like you said, sinister. We're talking about portals. So who knows what was there? Because beforehand, again, this was a military base beforehand, and later on, afterwards, they said Native Americans tried to take that as a dwelling, like a place for themselves, like a memorial type place there too. And of course, Native Americans come into it because there's always in every haunting big thing there's some Native American tie-in, of course. But so if we're seeing creatures with glowing eyes and screams at night, so there's something more happening there.
It was a prison for almost 30 years, and it was a horrible prison. So there's got to be people getting tortured and everything. And going back to the Native American thing, they would bring people, I forget what they called it, but they would bring people to Alcatraz and abandon them there if they had committed great sins against the tribe.
That's even before the military base. This is way beforehand.
Way before the military base, like 200 years before.
Right.
They would bring people there and they would drop them off there and say, now you're going to have to deal with the thing that's on the island. And they would leave them there and later come back and find them strangled, drowned, decapitated. They would be dead. So it's like you said, if there's a story and the Native Americans knew about it from way back to Bigfoot, all these other stories that they were aware of, I tend to give a lot of credence to it.
Well, here's the thing. We're just saying it because we have Native Americans, you have the Spanish that came in the 1700s over there, and then American forces using it, all using it as kind of the same thing as a place of. I'm not talking about the military base, but even that, but they're all using it as a place of punishment. Taking you away from civilization and putting you on that lonely rock in the middle of the ocean with no way out. So all are using it for the same thing. So of course there's a history there of bad karma, just bad things happening over there.
When the Romans wanted to punish somebody, unfortunately, usually it was the Christians, they would take you, put you in the Colosseum, and they throw a bear in there or a couple of lions, a panther.
Lions too, right?
They would take their armed guards, give them knives, guns, and shields, and protection, and you had to fist fight with them. They put you in a place where they knew your chances were not good of getting out. Alcatraz was treated just like the Colosseum. People would abandon people there, and they'd say, okay, it's you against whatever, and people died. They always died. So putting that base there seemed like a good idea strategically, but if I could have avoided it, I probably would have gone. And then putting a prison there, I mean, they wanted those guys to die.
Well, I could see it as a strategic base. You have a fort there, ships coming in. This is this time that everyone was, trying to take everyone else's land all across the world. So everyone was trying to conquer other nations or conquer other lands. So I could see using it as a military base. But again, this cannot have been a good base. You're not getting off on the weekends to go off into town or something. You're stuck there. It's got to be such a dreary condition place if you're stuck there, military prison or whatever it is. Even the guards, that are calling, and they had homes there, right? I believe that there were guards living there with families, right? Over there.
Yeah, which again is a terrible idea. If there's a prison break,
right?
Your family's there.
Your family's there with kids, with this island of hardened criminals. It's just mind-boggling to me to have the whole things together. And we didn't even get to through the other, we talked about the screams in the other cell box. Among the other cell box, there's a ghost there named the Butcher. If someone was named the Butcher during their lifetime, that can't be good. You know that's not a benevolent, a kind spirit. You know that once the Butcher dies and it's haunting your place, that is not the place you want to be.
The only butcher that I would be affiliated with was that dude on the Brady Bunch that kept cutting the meat for the maid, Sam the Butcher. Sam the Butcher was okay. Anybody else, I'm thinking, is he cutting salami back there or what's going on? I wouldn't be sure about it. But yeah, that and in those days, people earned those names. There's a professional wrestler named Triple H. He is called The Game, but he gave himself that nickname. And wrestlers in the beginning, I mean, everybody calls him The Game now, but in the beginning, wrestlers would pick on him and say, you can't give yourself a nickname. Someone gives you a nickname. And he's like, nope, give myself a nickname. In those days, you earned a nickname. So if people were walking around saying, that dude's the Butcher, they meant that. He must have done atrocities to earn a name like that. Especially, in Alcatraz, where everybody's a murderer.
Was there a show just a few years ago with Alcatraz? It was, like you said, like a portal, like some dark dimension. I don't think I did. I think I watched maybe one episode of it, but it was like that concept, that it was like this evil place where a portal where spirits can come into this world or something. As along those lines. I didn't really watch that, but I remember reading about it so much. You remember the show or no?
It sounds familiar. Where evil could cross over. Now in the TV show Supernatural, they had that. They had certain ley lines, and some of them actually led to a portal where that led straight to the underworld, and people came through. But you're right. There was something more recent with that. I'll remember it eventually.
Now,
Hopefully, if I remember,
now
or you remember it and tell me, we'll put it along.
we'll put it on
along
there. So would you visit Alcatraz? So like I said, I would. There are places that I wouldn't go to, like we've talked about in other episodes there too. Alcatraz, I would go to just one, the history, and for someone who doesn't do a lot of these things, I told you I go to ghost tours in like wherever place I'm at. I love going to ghost tours. I it's again, I would love to see one, but I'm not sure if I would go. I want to find the bad ones either. So I do go to them, and I don't know what I do if I actually do found one of these ghost tours. So would you go to these? They have nighttime ghost tours to Alcatraz too, by the way.
I might go during the day, but I am a magnet for the supernatural. I think it floats around me all the time. So with that in mind, I guess it wouldn't change much if I went there because they're all around me anyway. But I would.
But is it creepier at night? Isn't it creepier at night to go see these things?
It's creepy for me at night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you went to the Shining. You went to the Shining Hotel, so you wouldn't go to Alcatraz?
I went to the Shining Hotel. I went during the day, but I went there fully expecting for something to follow me back. I was like, if there's something there, it's going to be, ooh, choo choo. There's the train, all aboard. Let's take him for a ride. I expected such a thing. So Alcatraz, I would probably go during the day. I would definitely go. There was a TV show called Fargo.
Yeah,
and on that TV show, the guy says the cop stops the guy, and he every time he gets stopped by a cop, he gives them his own little soliloquy.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you a story. So one time he says, "Do you know why humans started seeing in color? Because in the beginning we were just like the apes, and we only saw like green." And the guy's like, "No." He said, "So we can identify the dangers. We can see them. So that's why we started seeing in color, so we can have depth and we can see the dangers around us." And then he stared at him and he's like, "How's your vision?" Or he says something like that, like, "Can you tell that I'm a danger?"
Right.
Was his reference. That is the world to me. Someplace like Alcatraz, I would definitely have to see in color there. I'd have to be able to look around and try to identify, hey, I think that thing moved, tour's over, and I'd get out of there. I'd have to know that I could leave if I wanted to, because even on a tour, if there's not a trolley or a boat or something that's taking you back and forth, you're just as stuck as the prisoners.
Yes,
until somebody says all aboard. So I'd have to know I had a way out of there.
I think I'm with you. I mean, I've gone on nighttime ghost tours. I've gone in several places that I've been to. I went to nighttime ghost tours, which is, first of all, you got, if you're going to go on a ghost tour, you got to go at nighttime anyway. It's so much better. The atmosphere is so much better. The ambiance around you. That's the only way to go to a ghost tour for me. But I did the Jack the Ripper tour in London also, where they went to all the spots where, supposedly the murders, not supposedly, but the murders that they went to all the spots. And that was a creepy tour as well. That definitely was, because some of these things, like all these back alleys of London, it really was creepy. But yeah, I would go. I would probably go at night too. It's probably better for during the day. But I could see stuff being there. I could really see, if anywhere out of all the places we've talked about so far, we've talked about haunted places in hotels or forests. I believe in certain of these things. You do too. We've talked about, if anywhere was going to have haunting or spirits, it's this place. It's this place. This place is filled with bad karma, just a history of violence, violent people, history of torture at the place. I can see that. I can see that really easily. So out of all the places we've just talked about, I think so far this one to me has the most possibility of being legit haunted.
Agreed.
So you believe there's something there?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I'm sure of it. Is with everything that's gone on. I mean, you need one thing oftentimes to have another thing. If you want to have sandwich, you need bread. You want sharks, you're probably going to need water. You want hauntings, usually need some violence. So
Yes.
there, it is an abundance of violence. It's just a to use a big word, it's a cornucopia of violence. I mean, there were probably fistfights,
Yeah.
stabbings,
Fist fights
um,
at the very least, right? More.
yeah, everything. So I mean, all of that energy being, what was it? Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
When they had the toaster and they poured the stuff in the toaster, and they're like, if you give it positive, and they were singing that song, "Your love," they played that, and it started bouncing around and dancing, and then they yelled at it, and it exploded, and the toast popped in the air. It was the energy, the negative energy. That place is the Ghostbusters toaster, man. It's just filled with negative energy, and it's just waiting to blow up. And it'll be my luck because if given the opportunity, I probably will go there. And I'm going to show there 5 minutes before that toaster blows up. That's just my thing. So yeah, I think it's just waiting, and it's a horror show. It's a horror show.
What would be the creepiest to you? Walking by the showers and hearing that banjo music, or just like, the screams and cries walking through the cell blocks?
The screams and the cries would get me if I went into a room, because you can in the tours they lock you in the cell, so you can
Yeah.
get an idea of what
I don't know if I love that so much, but yes.
yeah, that's not for me. If I get in one of those cells and I see big yellow eyes, then yeah, I'm running right through the metal, right through the metal, right through the wall.
Yeah, I think the same there too. They do. I read that they lock you in there to see for you to experience it. I don't need that
Yeah,
experience. I don't think, but it is cool. It is a cool place. I would definitely want to visit there. I still do want to visit there. I've not been, so I would like to take that ghost tour. You and I. That's what you and I should go together. That's be our aim. You and I should do that Alcatraz ghost tour one day.
that'd be good. From the looks of it, it looks like an 8x4. Just
Tell.
not even long enough for you to stick your arms out completely, but it's small. It's a little bitty spot.
Yeah, it really is. It's amazing that people live there like that. It really is. It's just so terrifying to me
Yeah.
to be there. But like you said before, these people earned their way over there. They really did.
Yes.
Well, let us know what you guys think in the comments. Let us know if you've been to Alcatraz, you've experienced it, you believe, don't believe, and whether you think these people escaped. Also, the 3 people supposedly escaped from that island. But once again, this has been Nightmares Before Bed. I'm Jonathan Rosen with Troy Cannon, and please like, comment, and subscribe.
Thank you for watching Nightmares Before Bed. And now, it's time to shut the lights, close your eyes, and go to sleep, if you can.